Hello, dear student. Welcome to Sociolinguistics lessons. Okay, in today's lesson, we'll be talking about difference between language and dialect. Different groups of people who speak the same language speak it differently. For example, we have Bostonian language, New Yorkers language, blacks in Chicago, they have also their own language, whites in Denver, they have their own language, and all exhibit variation in the way they speak English. When there are systematic differences in the way groups of people speak a language, we say that each group speaks a dialect of that language. So a dialect refers to a variety of language that is a characteristic of a particular group of the language speakers. It is spoken and not written. Okay, so this is the definition of dialect. It refers to a variety of language that is a characteristic of a particular group. Okay, so it is associated with a particular group. On the other hand, language refers to a particular variety that is written and very rarely used as spoken form. So according to this definition, language is not spoken language. It can be spoken, yet it is mostly used as or used in the written form. So a language has more prestige and more linguistic items than a dialect. It is also written, whereas a dialect is spoken. So what is the difference between language and dialect? A dialect is not an inferior or degraded form of language, and logically could not be so because a language is a collection of dialects. So it is not always easy to decide whether the differences between two speech communities reflect two dialects or two languages. Okay, that is, it is difficult to draw a distinction between where language ends and where dialect starts, and vice versa. So, however, as an attempt to draw a distinction between language and dialect, sociolinguists rely on some criteria. The first one is size. So these are the criteria to distinguish between language and dialect. So size, language is larger than dialect. That is, a variety called a language contains more items than one called a dialect. In this sense, we may refer to English as a language because it contains all the items in its dialects. For example, we talked before or in this session about New York dialect, Boston dialect, Denver dialect. So language is a collection of dialects and it has the items of all dialects. However, a dialect has only the items that are spoken by that certain group. Prestige. Language has prestige which dialect lacks. So, for example, Standard Arabic is more prestigious than Moroccan Arabic or Egyptian Arabic or any other dialects in the Arab world. So, therefore, Standard Arabic is a language and Moroccan Arabic is a dialect. The third criterion is mutual intelligibility. When dialects become mutually intelligible, that is, when the speakers of one dialect group can no longer understand the speakers of another dialect group, these dialects become different languages. Okay, so mutual intelligibility is about the understanding of language between two different groups. So we have this group, for example, understands the language of another group, and another group understands the language of this group. So if these are mutually intelligible, then these two dialects are instances of the same language. So if the speakers of different groups do not understand each other, so the dialects are different languages. So they don't belong to the same language, but they are different languages. However, Danes speaking Danish and Norwegians speaking uh, Norwegians speak in Norwegian, and Swedes, speaking Swedish can converse with each other. So, nevertheless, Danish and Norwegian and Swedish are considered separate languages because they are spoken in separate countries and because there are regular differences in their grammar. So this, these or almost all of these criteria are difficult to apply because sometimes, like in Danish or Danish language, and Norwegian language, and Swedish language, they can converse each other. The speakers understand each other. However, they are considered separate languages. You see, so it's really difficult to account for the difference between language and dialect based on these criteria. Accordingly, it is an uphill task to differentiate between language and dialect. What one finds is that there is no major break between dialects. Rather, dialects merge into each other, forming a dialect continuum. There are two types of dialects. So we have regional dialect and social dialect. Regional dialect, when various linguistic differences accumulate in a particular geographic region. For example, the city of Boston, the southern area of the United States, okay, the language spoken has its own character. Each version of the language is referred to as a regional dialect. So basically, a regional dialect is a dialect that is associated with a certain region. In regional dialects, we may have differences between the dialects. So each regional dialect has its own characteristics. Okay, so for example, we'll find the difference in terms of phonology. Phonological differences mean this means that regional dialects might differ in the pronunciation of words. For example, the dropping sorry, that's you have to remove there. So the dropping of R before consonants, okay, you can correct that when you're taking notes from this video. So the dropping of R before consonants and at the end of words such as farm, father, and father are pronounced as farm, father, and father, respectively, in southern area in the US. So these are the phonological differences. So some dialects, regional dialects, drop R whenever the R occurs before a consonant or at the end of a word. Another difference is lexical. Regional dialects might differ in the words people use for the same object. So we have tap for sit, spigot for the same thing. We have blinds, the shades, the curtains. Again, these refer to the same thing, but the difference is only lexical, and you can find these differences whenever we move from a regional dialect to another. And then we have syntactic differences. Regional dialects can also be distinguished by systematic syntactic differences. For example, we'll have John will eat and Mary will eat. This is a sentence, and in some dialects in the United States, the speakers of a certain regional group would say John and Mary will eat. That is, they have the same meaning. John will eat and Mary will eat. John will eat and marry. So these are the differences in terms of syntax that are reflected in each regional dialect, especially in the United States. We have also these differences may occur also in other languages, not just English. And then we have social dialects. So we talked about regional dialect in which we have the differences we talked about. And then we have social dialect as the second type of dialect. So the social boundaries that give rise to dialect variation are numerous. They may be based on socioeconomic status, religious or religion, sorry, ethnic or racial differences, uh, country of origin, and even gender. Okay, so these uh, variation could be the result of socioeconomic status, religion, religious uh, variation, ethnic and racial differences, etc. Middle class, for example, middle class American and British speakers are often distinguishable from working class speakers. And then in Baghdad, again, the Christian, Muslims, and Jewish groups all speak different varieties of Arabic. Okay, so these are social dialects which are based on social factors. So the social factors, for example, of in Baghdad are the result of religion. So Christians, Muslims, and Jews they speak different versions of Arabic. And then middle class and in America, middle class, American middle class and British middle speakers, this is something that has to do with social, economic, or ethnic, etc., or racial differences. So social dialect is another type of dialect, and we also have differences in the language, differences in the variation of language used by different social dialects. Thank you very much for your attention and see you in the next video.